CreativeSmoothie.com. Boost your creativity.
Hey guys, John here from CreativeSmoothie.com. We help you boost your creativity and create impactful experiences. I'm here in a kitchen, it looks like, with my good friend and longtime creative entrepreneur, Jackie Gorski. She is a world traveler, just started her own advertising business, and always seeking inspiration. Would you say that's true?
Yes, absolutely true. Whenever I get into a rut or I feel that I'm no longer moving forward, the first thing I do is pack up my bags and head somewhere new.
Okay, wow. Well, I'm in the right place. Good to hear. So why don't you start, Jackie, with giving us a bit of a background on what you're up to, what defines you as a creative entrepreneur?
Well, I guess the title in terms of a creative entrepreneur, then I think that I relate more to just being a creative person in general, and I think that everyone is a creative individual, not just me. And that's the book that I'm currently reading. And essentially, I wouldn't really say that I put myself under any sort of a label, but rather in my life right now, I'm just pursuing creativity, looking at different things, definitely in the marketing and advertising industry, but also looking at any kind of avenues that, you know, feed my creativity, pique my interest, and generally keep me getting up in the morning.
Wow. How would you define creativity? It seems like must mean something very specific to you, no?
You know, that's a good question. I haven't really thought of that because initially I always thought that creativity was related specifically to the arts. And that if you are an artist, therefore you are the creative type. And arts being, you know, the obvious things such as a painter, a writer, poet, dancer, etc.
What about like a sushi chef?
Right, well since then I've realized that creativity, well yeah, that could be a sushi chef as well.
Just kidding guys, just kidding.
So, but I think since then my personal term of creativity has evolved and broadened to include anything that essentially involves you taking an existing idea or, you know, going into an industry and just shaking it up and bringing your own bit of, I guess, personality to that.
It's almost like adding a little bit of yourself to an idea, a business, maybe even an art form. To you means you're being creative.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. All right, so today we're going to talk about creative retreats. Coming up to the holidays, most of us are going to get a few weeks off to get away from the day-to-day grind and think a little bit. Maybe do some reading, maybe do some traveling, but definitely doing something a little bit more creative than usual. So you mentioned that you always have your suitcase packed. I think you have some bags packed right there for a trip that maybe I didn't even know about, but tell us what you meant by that.
Well, it all started, I'm a big fan of Tony Robbins. For those of you who, I won't even say, I think everyone knows who Tony Robbins is. And
we know who he is.
One of his major things is that whenever you're stuck, change your environment. Number one, like change where you are, because when you're in the same environment, in the same place, then essentially it feeds the same thoughts. So in order for you to think differently, you have to be in a different place. Because right now, if you're waking up in the same bed and you get up in the morning and you see the same thing, those automatic thoughts, they repeat every day, and it's very hard to break that, and they're really habitual thoughts. So if you...
Give me some examples of these thoughts.
Well, things like if you wake up in the morning and the first thing you say to yourself is, oh, I really don't want to get up. and it's really hard to get up. And then once you get up, then you think, I really don't like my life right now. I really don't like my job. And then you go to the washroom and you brush your teeth, and the whole time you're thinking about, I'm really stuck and there's no way out. Well, you're in that washroom every day, and every day you're brushing your teeth. And I bet that every time that toothbrush hits your mouth, then you're thinking again, I'm stuck and there's nothing that I can do about it.
It really actually happens to me when I floss. I always just have these epiphanies. Usually the toothbrushing is really easy for me, but the flossing really brings out some tears as I think about my life. But keep going.
Yeah, and so I was stuck in my life at a certain point, and I wasn't sure what to do. And so I remembered what Tony Robbins said, and so I decided that I was going to pack up my things and head to the Maritimes for 2 weeks with my bike.
The Maritimes?
Yeah, the Maritimes. So Nova Scotia, PEI, and New Brunswick. And it was maybe a bit more than 2 weeks. And during that time, then I cycled a lot around the area. Didn't really have too much of a plan. Drove a lot. Listened to a lot of inspirational CDs. And essentially just took myself out of the environment that was really feeding a lot of negativity and stuckness for me.
So when you say environments, you're talking about just the everyday kind of environments that you mentioned, so like your bedroom, the bathroom, the kitchen, the office?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's an example of going far. You can go even farther, you can go to another continent, but you can also have a similar effect by just driving an hour away from where you are and just spending the day in a new environment. And even on a smaller scale than that, it could include just rearranging your bedroom. You know?
So the gist of what Tony Robbins was trying to say was what?
Was essentially to change the things that you see every day in order to change your thoughts.
And for you, thinking back to just before you went on this big maritime biking tour, I think there's a bike there too. It must be what you're preparing for, right?
No, not quite.
Okay.
I think this time I'm not going to take my bike.
What was the trigger? Like, is it something that you saw as you were brushing your teeth, or was it just a thought that you had that said, like, I got to get out of this place and get on the road?
I think the thoughts that I had are similar to what a lot of people feel, which was I just wasn't happy, and I didn't know what the real reason was. I thought if I just try harder, then, tomorrow morning I'm going to feel differently, or, it'll pass, but it never did. And at a certain point, then I realized that if I felt like this a month ago, and then I felt like this 3 months ago, then why do I think that if I keep doing the same thing, I'll feel differently a month from now or 3 months from now?
Got it. So you took Tony Robbins' advice, you changed your environment, you decided that I need to go on a creative retreat. Why the Maritimes?
Because I think I think everyone has a special place in their heart, and for me it's important to go to the place that most speaks to me, and it just so happens to be Nova Scotia, because that's where I used to go with my father. So when I go there, then I feel a sense of peace, I feel a sense of calm. Luckily it's still within Canada, so it's not super duper expensive. But the one thing that I should note in all of this is that it's not an easy journey, and I cried a lot, and since then, in terms of doing all of these sorts of getaways, then you definitely don't have a moment of epiphany.
Wow.
It's more of a process, and one that you have to keep recommitting to.
Wow. So walk me through this choice of the Maritimes, choosing the environment that you're going to seek inspiration. For you, it seemed like it was very easy. It was related to your childhood, or it was related to just the Maritimes in general being a very inspirational place, or was it an easy choice to go there?
Yeah, I think that it's important not to overthink it.
Good point.
I also went to Peru a while ago, and it was literally a process of just looking at a map and just saying, like, eeny, meeny, miny, mo type of thing. And I think that it's less important about where you go and more important about just choosing the place that intuitively first just reaches out to you. and saying, okay, I'm not going to overthink this. I'm just gonna go with what my gut tells me. Because you can spend a lot of time debating where to go, what you're going to do. But really, it's about just choosing any place that you haven't been to before, that you don't regularly go to. And it's about setting an intention. And I think that there are a few things that I've learned in the process, because I've done this multiple times, is that I don't think that it's as simple as just saying, okay, I'm going to change my environment and I'm going to go. And when I get there, then after a few days, I'm going to have this epiphany, and then I'm going to say, like, okay, I have what I came for, now I can go back home and everything's great. The thing that I've learned is that it's really important to have a purpose, because I've actually gone without a specific purpose in mind. And I think if I just bike enough, or if I walk around enough, then something will hit me. But I think just like in regular life, if you weren't working at all and not working on any projects, it sounds really great at first. You have all this free time. But then after maybe a few days or a few weeks of sitting at home, then you begin to feel bad. And it's the same thing when you go away. I went away to Europe for 2 months, and out of that,
Wow.
then I went for 2 months and I realized that I had sort of gone without a specific purpose. The purpose was to travel and to have some epiphany hit me over the head, but it didn't really happen.
Wow.
And along my journey, then I found people who were actually traveling with a purpose. And an example of that was one guy who had gone away and he was traveling for about a year. And during that process, then he was committed to learning new skills every single month and writing about those skills. So
What's his name?
I can't even remember.
Okay, we'll find out. We'll find out afterwards.
And so he seemed to have his entire itinerary revolved around that, or maybe places that he chose to go to next, depended on what he wanted to learn. And he seemed to be a lot more content than a lot of other travelers that I had met who were just aimlessly traveling. People who had some sort of a project that they were working on, you know, and it can be as simple as, the project is that every day I'm going to talk to a stranger and I'm going to really listen to them, and I'm going to, you know, talk to them, and then maybe I'll just write or think about that after, and every day just to find one interesting person to sit down with and talk with. Or it can be something as big as, I'm going to write a book and I need to travel to these places, and, you know, and every day I'm going to write, you know, 500 words or whatever it is.
Did you learn Italian while you were in Italy?
No, I did not.
Oh my god. It's my dream to go to Italy and learn Italian. Or maybe Latin. I like Latin too. Seems a little bit more obscure. So, steps so far, based on what you've been telling me. One, have the realization that you have to it's time to get out of your environment and go on some sort of creative retreat. So, you have to realize that I've been brushing my teeth too long, been waking up in this bed too long, been drinking smoothies at this kitchen for too long. I need to get out of here. Step number 2, choosing the right place to go on a creative retreat. What you were telling me is don't think too much about it. So you're telling me I should delete that Excel sheet that I have about all the different places that I'm considering and my rankings of which one is best? Okay. Excel sheets deleted. Don't think too much about it. Follow your gut, not your brain. And the third thing is what you said. Have a purpose when you go. So have a reason to go on a creative retreat. Don't just go for the purpose of going on a retreat. You have to have a mission while you're there, be it writing a book, doing some paintings, or learning Italian. Yeah?
Yeah, I think it's important to have structure, no matter what. I mean, maybe some people
Structure.
can do it.
Like I thought I was going to be lying on a beach all day, no?
Well, I just find that personally for me, especially when you're going, like this, there is, what we're talking about here is like self-development, like spiritual growth type of, you know, just personal growth type of non-vacations. Like we're talking about, these are often painful, sometimes tearful, and very challenging trips. They are not to be confused with vacations. Yes, do I go on vacations? Of course. I think even we went once to Cuba with Navita.
Cuba, went to Cuba.
Yeah, three of us got together and we went to Cuba, and there was no intention. It was just drinking and lying on the beach.
So that wasn't a creative retreat?
No, that was not a creative retreat.
Even though I had very vivid creative memories from
right.
that Cuba, all-inclusive. It's another route to creativity. But that's not what you're talking about.
No, and maybe, in doing those as well, you can obviously get some sort of creativity. But I think sometimes we confuse vacations with creative retreats, and they're very different. They're very different in the process. They're very different in the intentions. And mostly they're very different in terms of how you feel while you're doing it. A creative retreat isn't about just having fun. And so when you're in the midst of it and you find that it's really hard, then don't think this isn't working. I'm supposed to be on vacation. I'm paying for this trip, and why am I not having fun? Rather go back to your why. Because if you're going away on a wine tour and you just want to relax and disconnect for a week and you're not having fun, then yeah, that's an issue. But if you're in a creative retreat and you're like banging your head against the wall, then that just means that you're putting yourself in a very vulnerable place. And that you just need to stay with that and just go through those emotions and not run back home.
Did you have a moment like that in either your backpacking through Europe or biking through the Maritimes?
I had many moments like that, and specifically I remember in Europe, everything was good up until about the first 3 weeks. And then suddenly in the 4th, 5th week, I started feeling a little bit like, shit, am I really gonna get what I need out of this trip? I started realizing how much money I was spending, and I guess a bit of panic set in. And especially at that point, I was really traveling without a plan. And I didn't know where I was gonna sleep. I would sometimes land in a place and it was already nightfall and I didn't know where I was.
Sounds exciting.
Yeah, and it was also scary. And so
Okay.
I think specifically between day 30 and 40, and these are just personal dates for me. I mean, that range and maybe you won't experience this, but between day 30 and 40, I really panicked, and for some reason, I just wanted to go home. And I even went so far as to thinking about, okay, how much is a plane to get back? I'm wasting so much money. But I decided to go back to my why and just remember that this was about, for me, being in Europe by myself for 2 months without a plan was really about building my personal strength and about the belief that I can handle things on my own. So instead of retreating, I stayed there. And around day 40, I had a massive breakthrough where I just suddenly felt better. And I just suddenly felt like I had entered into this sort of rhythm and flow of being a backpacker and of just being okay with not knowing anything and not having a plan. So before I was fighting it, and then suddenly the pain just kept escalating until I just had a breakthrough and all the pain was gone.
Wow. So I guess if it takes 21 days to break a habit, it takes 40 days to have a breakthrough on a backpacking trip. I guess I'll test that one day, maybe in Eastern Europe, I think is my next place. But okay, so the purpose of your Europe trip ended up not being about creativity, ended up being more about confidence and the ability to survive in Europe on your own without a plan. So compare that to the Maritimes. How was the Maritimes trip different in terms of its purpose? Now you're not just backpacking, you're biking through the Maritimes. And did you get more out of it than in Europe?
I think that ultimately the purpose was actually the same, because it all comes down to being stuck and then just thinking, okay, I'm going to change my environment, see what happens. And yeah, so I would actually say that they were very much the same. But the one thing that I personally learned in my experiences that I feel people don't often talk about is that the trip doesn't end when the trip ends.
The trip doesn't end when the trip ends.
It continues. And so people think that you go on the trip and then you have this idea and moment, this breakthrough moment during your trip, and then you come back and then you implement everything and your life is different. But what I would say is that there's a processing time in that.
Okay.
So you go away and then you feel like, okay, things aren't really working and maybe this is a waste of my time, but you stick with the trip, and then you're on your way back home, and maybe you feel like, oh yeah, I got some stuff out of it. Maybe I didn't get as much as I thought or exactly what I thought, but then you have to give it some time. It's like those old photographs where you have to give it some time to develop. And so I would say that depending on how long you went away for, like between a week and a month, when you're back, then you really begin to, all those lessons begin to sink in, and that's where you really begin to feel the effects of the trip. So if you went away for, let's say, a week, then maybe for a week later it'll be developing. If you went away for a month, maybe a month later it'll still be developing. So the longer the trip, I find, the longer that processing time takes.
Almost as if we're like a fine piece of Kodak film, just developing in that dark room. All right, so tell me more about, I'm really interested to hear about this Maritimes trip. It seemed like it did a lot of good for you. Creatively, confidence, inspiration. Can you give us some anecdotes of what happened? So you got to the Maritimes, and then did it immediately hit you, this inspiration, or did it take some time?
No, it definitely took some time. And so I've gone on many of these, and I went to the Maritimes twice. So I went again.
Twice, wow.
I guess I went just a couple of months ago.
Okay.
And what I found for me was very helpful in these is talking to people. I thought that if I just sit there and like read a book or like sit in my own thoughts, that'll somehow
probably what I would
change things.
Yeah.
But really talking to people was the most helpful, especially people from a different place.
Did you have any tips to approaching strangers in a strange land?
I would say that just be open when someone looks in your direction or just asks you something, like keep that conversation going, because there are plenty of opportunities to talk to people. So ask a lot of questions. I just found that just asking people about their story, telling them about why I was here, it really got the conversation flowing, because especially being a female on my own traveling, then people were like, oh, don't you feel scared? And that would just kind of start the conversation.
It was a really interesting person that you approached and ended up having an amazing, inspirational conversation with in the Maritimes?
Yeah, well, actually one place that I stayed in through Airbnb, then the woman who owned the house, who was also staying there upstairs, she ended up inviting me upstairs to where she stayed, and we had like an hour-long conversation, and it turns out that she does a similar thing to what I do. And she just generally had some perspectives, being older than me, in terms of ways.
She invited you in her house?
Yeah.
Wow.
Ways of looking at things that I hadn't thought of. And I, in a sense, got a glimpse of a bit of my future self in terms of what was possible.
That's kind of creepy.
Yeah.
What was her name?
I can't remember.
Okay. Well, another thing to add after in post-production. That's awesome. So you met this woman. Did you seek her out? Did you know about her already? Or?
No, I didn't. And so what I find with traveling is that there are helpers along the way, and they emerge at any point.
Wow.
And you just have to keep your eyes open for these people that are there to act as guides.
That's incredible. That's incredible. That's very mysterious of you to say. Did you? Well, tell me how you met her at least. Like, how did you guys end up connecting?
Well, I mean, when you stay in Airbnb, then you're obviously staying in someone's house.
Oh, okay, of course.
And so she ended up just.
So it's literally, but you didn't know that. You didn't know who.
I didn't know who she was. I didn't know anything about her.
Wow.
So yeah, and so she just came down to like say hi, and then I just kind of asked her. The best thing to ask is about someone else's life.
Got it.
And not to be nosy, but out of just pure interest, and that's sort of what I like to do, is just hear people's stories.
Do you just say, like, tell me everything about your life?
Not quite.
What's the best question that you can ask to be interested in somebody that you want to meet in a strange land, but not be too nosy?
Well, I would say maybe a good way in is to notice something that you like about that person, or yeah, I would say something that you like about them or that you have noticed about them, and say, I noticed that you seem very happy. And for instance, in Spain, it seems like everyone is happy. Like, how come you're so happy? Can I ask you what is the key to happiness for you? Because you're always smiling.
Wow. I'm going to try that today on the subway and see how that goes
Good luck.
with a few strangers, although I don't think they're very happy. Okay, so going on a creative retreat, traveling, it's really important to meet people, have these spontaneous conversations. You never know, you might meet your future self, the woman without a name, as Jackie did at her Airbnb house. What else are some tips that you can give us of these moments that you had in Maritimes?
Yeah, and so I guess when you're there, then, as events pop up at you, or things that, get-togethers, or someone invites you somewhere, just say yes.
Just say yes?
Don't turn them down, right? And also...
Did that happen to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I went to... A really good example is that I went to a farmer's market, and there was a guy selling meat. I bought some of his meat, and then I was sitting in a coffee store. And
with your meat?
No, this was 2 days after. Okay. And I saw the guy, this gentleman who had sold me the meat, and I said, "Hey, aren't you the guy from the farmer's market?" And he said, "Yes, I am." And I said what I like, which is, your meat was really good. I really enjoyed it. Can you tell me a little bit about your farm or your farmer? Turns out that he's the owner of a very large and beautiful farm.
Wow.
And we got chatting, and before I knew it, then I was sitting in a greenhouse with 20-something other people enjoying Thanksgiving dinner.
Incredible. With this guy who sold you meat.
Yeah.
Wow. I guess, should I try that line on the subway tonight too? Hey, I really like your meat.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Okay. I'll let you know how it goes. So, wow. So, trying to meet as many people as you can and being open to spontaneous meetings.
Mm-hmm.
Saying yes to the opportunities that are given to you after you have those meetings. Tell us another inspirational moment or story from the Maritimes that you still think about today.
Well, I would say for me, driving was a big one, because usually I would think of it as a waste of time. But I think everyone has maybe some sort of a activity. For some people it could be cooking, or it could be, washing the dishes, or it can be just walking the dog, or whatever it is. And for me, it's driving. And even though it seems like an everyday thing, I'm doing it in a different environment. And when I was driving is when I really got the most sort of clarity, as well as some ideas were sort of coming to me in an unexpected way. And so I embraced this whole thing of driving, that's okay, and that I don't need to be, sitting in these beautiful cafes all the time, and that maybe just driving is a good enough thing in new scenery.
So to you, driving in the Maritimes was much more inspirational than just driving around the city in your normal everyday life?
Yes, absolutely. Because again, you're seeing different things.
Any highlights of what you saw?
Well, I guess when I was there, I've seen.
Take me there.
Moose.
Take me there. Take me to the Maritimes. Take us to the Maritimes.
Well,
everyone, close your eyes. Take me to the Maritimes. Right now.
Yeah. So, I went through Halifax.
Mm-hmm.
And when you drive outside of Halifax, and suddenly you see a body of water, and you loop around, and there's some old churches, and there's a very quaint little town. It's called Mahone Bay. I highly recommend it.
Mahone Bay.
And when I went there, then it's just before Halloween, and there are all these scarecrows and pumpkins.
I'm scared. Keep going. Scarecrows and pumpkins.
Yeah. And and all the houses are different colors. And when I went, then it was slightly gray, which is quite nice in terms of it's actually quite scary at times. It looks with the pumpkins and the scarecrows.
Wow.
And so it's a very quaint little village, and I really love it.
Wow. So driving and just being in different environments than your usual Even it's interesting, like just doing these mundane things, like driving in a different environment, was inspirational to you.
Absolutely.
Wow.
So that's why, I mean, you can choose to go somewhere far, and oftentimes the reason why it's good to go somewhere far is because you can't easily just go back home.
What would you say was like the most creative moment for you, or inspirational moment in the Maritimes? In addition to what you've shared with us, was there an aha moment, a place where you found an aha moment, or a moment during the trip where you just woke up and you felt much more creative than you did before you left?
Yeah, well, I guess I just saw some maybe opportunities that were showing themselves in terms of business opportunities that I hadn't thought of, and it was purely through talking to people and seeing what other people were doing. And I had multiple ideas in terms of even things like going to the farmer's market and seeing what they're selling relative to here, and then thinking, oh, this is a product that actually would be really cool at the farmer's market. Not necessarily that I'm going to go sell at the farmer's market, but it was an idea, and you know, just talking to people and just seeing what products are available for me was idea generating new ideas.
So there wasn't, I always thought it was just this, you go to the Maritimes and, you know, you're sitting on the coast looking out at the Atlantic Ocean and you have this amazing epiphany. What you're telling us is that it's actually a lot of little epiphanies that you have as you're going about meeting different people, saying yes to opportunities, and even driving.
Yeah, and so it's important to let those kind of ideas percolate a little bit and sit with them, and then if they keep grabbing your attention, write them down so you don't forget them.
Write them down, okay. I don't have my notebook with me.
You should always carry a notebook on you.
Always carry your notebook. All right, that's a good tip too. So tell us, it seems like you had a really inspirational creative adventure in the Maritimes for a couple weeks. You met a woman who could be your future self, just happened to be your Airbnb host. You met a farmer, you liked his meat, and he invited you to a Thanksgiving dinner. And just driving around to these, what was the name of that town?
Mahone Bay.
Mahone Bay provided a creepy yet inspirational experience for you. Sounds amazing. Talk to us about this development time that you mentioned a little bit earlier about you get back here. Now you're back in the environment that you left at the beginning. Did it go back to the way that it was in terms of your creativity? Or did you have to work at processing what you experienced?
Yeah, I think that I wrote down my ideas, and so it's now a matter of implementing them and re-looking at them and saying which ones are good, which ones are bad. Because sometimes when you're in a new environment, then you can become overly inspired and think everything is a good idea. So it takes some time to process it and to see how you like it a month later or 2 months later. And just remember how you felt in that moment, and then commit to taking the best three and testing them and seeing how they work.
So your notebook is your number one tool for recording your experiences that you had, your ideas? Okay. Anything else that you use?
Just a notebook.
Just a notebook, okay. Don't need anything else, just a notebook.
Yeah.
I like that. It keeps it very simple. You don't have to get bogged down with
taking
photos.
On your phone.
Not on your phone, really?
No. It has to be
all my notes are on my phone.
There's something about writing it down on a piece of paper.
Okay. Tell us, so you've got these notes, you're trying to retain that magic from the Maritimes. Is there anything that you do, even now, to put yourself back into that inspired creative mindset that you were on the East Coast?
Yeah, well, one of the things that I realized was that when you go away, then I thought that I would have a lot more time than I did. But sometimes time flows. I mean, just like when you're here, you have to shower, you have to eat. Last time I moved my dog, so I have all of these responsibilities, puppy, so there's a lot of stuff. You know, you want to read this many books that you brought with you, but time doesn't go slower when you're away. Oftentimes it goes even faster than here. And so I realized that I couldn't actually get to all of the things that I had planned. And so instead of just giving up, then I decided to do the things that I couldn't do here at home now.
Like
Things like I got some pencil crayons that I wanted to draw.
Wow.
So I decided that I would do it here versus over there.
Okay, so you actually did the pencil crayons here?
Yes.
Now that you're back?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any drawings that you can show us?
No, not really.
Okay. We'll post those afterwards, trust me. Okay, so it's awesome. It's almost like you have these notes, you're trying to keep yourself within that mindset that you had, and you're finding little activities that you can do, such as drawing. What else have you been doing since coming back from the Maritimes? Anything new?
I would say just keeping up with reading, because I brought a whole bunch of books that I thought that I would read. So,
on the trip?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm still reading them.
Doesn't that always happen to you? Doesn't it always happen to you? So you're catching up with the books that you couldn't read during the creative retreats.
Yeah. And then the other thing is that when I went away, I really wanted to minimize my time on the computer. And so I've continued to carry that on. Yeah, I did. I didn't go on the computer much.
Okay. Wow. So it seems like you had a really transformative experience in the Maritimes. You came back a little bit more inspired. Talk to us about your next adventure. Are you going to be here for a while, or is there another place that you're going to go to soon?
Yeah, so
I see those bags. I know that something's
February, then I'm going away again to Peru, to the Amazon jungle.
Peru? Oh my God. Wow.
Yeah.
So Europe, the Maritimes, Peru. What's different about Peru versus the Maritimes? Have you been there before? Or?
I've been to Peru, but not extensively in the Amazon. Last time I was only there for about 5 days or a week. So I'm going for a month to the Amazon jungle.
Wow.
And I've decided to go on a more structured retreat, because I find that right now I'm really craving structure. So I'm mixing it up, trying different strategies to get the most out of things. And also, the more you test different things, the more you see what works for you. So, you know, as much as there's certain aspects of each that work for me, then now I'm going to try something a little bit different. So I'm going on a more structured retreat, spiritual retreat, and we're going to see how it goes.
So no structure in Europe, a little bit of structure in the Maritimes, and now completely structured creative retreat where everything is sort of decided for you.
Yeah, where there's like yoga at a certain time, meditation at a certain time, color therapy at a certain time.
Amazing. Can you get us a coupon code?
No, there's no coupon code.
Sold out?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry guys, sold out. I'm sure there'll be one in 2017. Okay. Wow, so that sounds fantastic. Do you always feel like you're going to be doing these creative retreats once a year, several times a year?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely commit to them every year, and I try to do it more if possible. But once a year, longer trip. And then usually in the year, then I'll do a couple of smaller ones.
Wow, so always, in some ways, going on creative retreats.
Always, yeah.
Are there any... I'm not as much of a traveler as you, although I want to be. Are there any little creative retreats that I can take here without making the investment of going to the Amazon? What can we do on an everyday basis?
Yeah, well, I would say things like just taking a day trip, an hour out of Toronto. Things like going to a neighborhood that you haven't been to and doing like a neighborhood tour. Because you can pretend that you're a tourist anywhere. You can be a tourist in your own city. And you are a tourist if you go to a neighborhood and you haven't been there before. And so one of the things that I've done in the past is gone to different neighborhoods, had brunch there, walked around and pretended like I was a visitor.
Did you have your camera and your notebook out?
Yeah, I had a camera and everything.
Okay. So should I go to Scarborough and find an Airbnb host
you can
there?
Certainly do that.
Could be my future self.
Might be. Yeah.
Okay. I'll think about that one a little bit harder, I think. Well, great. So it seems like we got a lot of great tips from you today. Creative retreats. If you're feeling that you're in a rut, you're feeling that you're not as creative as you could be, sometimes the solution is to change your environment, right? So it's the steps that you outlined, I believe, were have the realization that in this case it might be an environment that you just need to get out of, experience something new. Be quick about making the choice. Don't think too hard about it. Trust your gut, not your brain. then go there and make sure that you have some structure. So you're helping yourself, you're motivated to meet people, say yes to the opportunities that come your way, be it a Thanksgiving dinner or a farmer's market, and being open to even just doing things as normal as walking around or driving might be interesting. And then the final step when you get back is give yourself time to process what you experienced. Make sure that you have a notebook with you, not on your phone, on paper, in order to capture all the moments that you had, and then finding little creative retreats that you can have throughout your time now that you're back in your usual environment, be it pencil crayons or just reading some inspirational books. Well, thanks very much, Jackie, for sharing these experiences with us. Do you have any final words? So if there was someone out there who heard everything that we talked about, but they still had a little bit of doubt about whether the next 2 weeks during the holidays, whether they should explore going on a creative retreat, what would you tell them?
I would say that just do it, but also...
Nike said that.
Yeah, but I would say more than that, just be open to the fact that it may or it may not work. But know that if you stay where you are, it's definitely not going to work.
Wow. I'm going to write that in my new notebook. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
All right, guys. So, as usual, if you liked what you heard today, if you enjoyed our podcast, you can subscribe to us on YouTube. Subscribe as well on iTunes. You can listen on SoundCloud, and even enter your email address to get updates at creativesmoothie.com. Thanks, Jackie. I'm ready for a creative retreat now. Let's go.
Okay, let's go.
Featuring music mixed by DJ Corey Dawkins. For more, visit djcorey.dawkins.com.